fabulous show.
Alaska.
Hi, Heartbeat Alaska.
It's Heartbeat. Alaska.
Pull up a chair and enjoy the show.
Hear it from Sitka to Barrow. Gather around for Jeannie's show. It's the Aleut, the Indian, and the Eskimo. It's the Aleut, the Indian, and the Eskimo.
Welcome one, welcome all.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heartbeat Alaska Native News and Native Information. I'm Jeannie Green. Thank you so much for joining us. On last week's program, we traveled to Kivalina, Alaska. We presented part one of a two-part series, Kivalina, A Village on the Move. Today, we revisit the village and see how the village is struggling to save itself. Kivalina Part 2 coming up.
Any one of these structures, tank farms, were a storm or two away from losing those structures.
Heartbeat Alaska is brought to you in part by Brown's Electric Lighting Gallery. Thank you, Brown's Electric, for your generous support of Heartbeat Alaska.
Heartbeat Alaska is also brought to you by Comtech Business Systems Incorporated and by the Manilac Association, providing health and social services to residents of Northwest Alaska for over 30 years.
Heartbeat Alaska is also brought to you by Frontier Flying Service. Thank you, Frontier, for getting Heartbeat Alaska airborne.
Heartbeat Alaska is also brought to you by Ed's Kasilof Seafoods.
Kivalina, Alaska is a village situated on 8 feet above sea level on sand, which makes it very dangerous. And in the year 2004, a storm hit that city, battering it and stealing away more of the real estate. Today, we present Kivalina, A Village on the Move, Part 2. On Kivalina Part 1, Enoch Adams explained Kivalina's history.
This community was started around 1903 because the people who lived on the rivers, both the Wallach River and the Kivalina River, and also up and down the coast, they were told that their children have to come to school. So a school was built on this site, and people who lived out in the tundra and on the rivers were told that their children had to school, so they built homes here. Actually, this is probably the widest part. This is probably about 180 yards. This probably is about 120 here, right here, about 120 yards. Yes, some of the homes that are here in Kivalina are occupied by 3 families. Some of them. That's about 18 people in a 2-3 bedroom home. And it is a huge problem right now with some of the families. The families are experiencing pressures that they should not be experiencing. in a normal setting.
The fact that there is no room to expand, coupled with the potential for flooding and erosion of Kivalina, led to another problem.
We don't have water and sewer. The general population does not have water and sewer. Only the school and the clinic have water and sewer. Nobody else has. And we've been told by ANTC that, and right now Village Safe Water, that they will not put a water and sewer system in this town site because the community will grow. There's about 100 people that have left Kivalina because of a lack of space to build homes.
Trapped on an island with no water or sewer and no room to expand about 10 years ago, the village began searching for a way to move. Moving a village is a bureaucratic nightmare. The process involves just about every government office and agency imaginable. The village formed a relocation committee. Enoch Adams is the chairman.
Right now, we just completed the 8th year of a 5-year planning phase. So things have not been going as well as we thought they would.
When the committee settled on a few potential sites, they let the whole village vote to select their new home. Then there was a problem. Tom Bolem from the Northwest Arctic Borough explains.
So a site was chosen back here on the Willock River because of its terrain and its proximity to subsistence resources. But what was ultimately determined through soil work was that that site was underlain by extremely ice-rich soils, which meant that it was going to be extremely costly to try to develop that as an actual town site. So that site was abandoned. And several years of the process, kind of became water under the bridge.
Then, as we saw in part 1 of this 2-part series, the village got a wake-up call from the sea. October 19th, 2004. Normally by mid-October, this time of year, sea ice would pile up on Kivalina's beach. When the fall storms hit, as they always do in this part of Alaska, the ice would act as a breakwall, protecting the village from the waves. This fall, there was no ice. When the wind and waves began to flow into the village, it was up to the people to protect their homes. David Swan is also on the relocation committee.
And then over here is where the church is. And the waves were coming over and created like a creek where it was going into the main road over here, and another site further down to the point where we had to set up three pumps.
As waves crested the beach, the middle of the village began to flood. Soon the principal's trailer home was hanging over the sea.
That utility pole that you see leaning against the other utility pole is one of the 2 utility poles that got washed out during the first storm. It was like, when I looked at my watch, it was like 2:30 in the morning, and we were temporarily out of power, the whole community, until they were able to come back and put the power back on for the community. But the impact of the storm, when it caused these utility poles to come down, it caused the community to have a blackout temporarily. But they were able to put power back on despite the weather, the wind, the conditions.
He showed us just how much was lost during the fall storms of 2004.
Prior to the first and second storm in October and November, we used to be able to stand about over here, parallel with that bank up there. That bank was parallel to about this high, and parallel to those pieces of ground that eroded. Prior to October, we were able to drive our snow four-wheelers, but after the first and second storm, this is virtually how much ground we have lost from the first and second storm. Okay, what we have here is the Alaska Village Electric Cooperative tank farm. I think what we're beginning to fear now, these tank farms are probably a storm or two away from being washed away if we have another storm like we did in October 2004.
Oran Knox Sr. is a strong man who spent his life hunting and fishing around Kivalina. But when the waves topped the beach and began to flood the village, even Oran became worried.
We really need some help in our village right here. I was scared even when October 18, Tony, a couple of days, hardly sleep even.
Any one of these structures, tank farms, were a storm or two away from losing those structures.
Flying in Alaska? Fly Frontier, the official airline of Heartbeat Alaska. Frontier is expanding again. They've added new routes to Nome, Kotzebue, and the surrounding villages. As you can see, Frontier is now really covering Alaska. So the next time you fly, try Frontier. Frontier offers quick, convenient check-in, low fares, and service direct to many of the villages. Frontier Flying Service is the official airline of Heartbeat Alaska. Make it your official airline too.
Why do you stare at the mountaintop, Anna?
The mountain tells us the early sign of a storm.
How does the mountain speak?
When you see small clouds at the top, it's saying there will be a storm. Life speaks too. Like our ancestors, look for sign in nature. We can look for early sign of a breast cancer.
Call your healthcare provider today for a screening appointment. Early detection can save your life.
In the 1890s, pioneers carved a railway through the rugged mountains between Skagway and the Klondike. More than a century later, the White Pass and Yukon route still makes this legendary run. Along the way, life has gotten better for folks working on the railroad, thanks in part to Primera Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alaska, a health plan that's offered smart choices and quality coverage to the people of Alaska since before it was a state. Primera Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alaska. We're here. We're with you.
Your Alaska State Troopers remind you that if you're transporting alcohol by common carrier into an area that restricts the sale of alcohol, you must clearly label the package with the words alcoholic beverages and attach an itemized list. Failure to do so is called bootlegging, and it's against the law. Anyone with information on bootlegging is asked to call the Alaska State Troopers. Rewards of up to $600 are paid for successful tips. Let's all work together to stop bootlegging in Alaska.
Now, with only a few feet of sand separating the tank farms from the sea, and with the memory of that huge storm still in everyone's mind, the village holds a meeting.
Do you come up? Do you come up and around? Is it all jet boat during certain seasons? Yeah.
Experts working with the Army Corps of Engineers and other players in the relocation project are here. Despite the growing frustration and anxiety in the village, a spirit of cooperation pervades the meeting.
And what they want to do in this meeting is they want to put all your concerns about how we want to design our community when we relocate. although the site has not been finalized, there's a lot of other stuff that they need to discuss first before we finalize the site selection.
The second thing is if we follow all the existing programs and all the permits and all the requirements the way they would normally do it, it's going to mean for a very long relocation schedule. You're going to see when we talk about the relocation schedule, if you've gone by all the rules and regulations, it could take 10 years to move the community. And so part of the message from that meeting is we have to think about some other ways to make the schedule go more quickly.
We're going to wait another 10 years, maybe 8 years. That's too long. We got to do something. The houses up there, one pole is right in the edge now. We got to move it. Things getting fast right here out in the orchard. Oh, look, summer's getting longer, we know that. And summer's getting harder every summer. We all know that. I thought you moved up. You're not out up.
The second site the village selected, Katuruk, also has a problem. According to the engineers, the cost of moving to that site may be hundreds of millions of dollars. So, 8 years after the relocation committee began working, they are still struggling to select a new village site. Still, everyone involved realizes why they must continue on. David Swan put the village's feelings into words.
I don't want to be sounding like I'm animated, but I'm just like the rest of the community members. Me being on the relocation committee, some days I get frustrated, I get tired of waiting and ask myself, why am I doing this? I should just quit, but I am not. I'm going to do it as long as I'm living here, and I hope it becomes a reality in my time. And I'm going to see that it becomes a reality every which way I can. My concern are these kids and their kids that are going to be coming after them. They deserve better. They need to have better living conditions. It don't matter now to me where we move. As long as we move to a location where our kids can have better access and have the same accommodations that the big cities have. They deserve it. They need it now.
But what remains unsaid tonight is the fear that is on everyone's minds. You see, the fall storms of 2004 were severe, but stronger storms are very possible. Tom Bolem explains.
Right now what you're seeing, or the storm that we just had in October, you saw heavy wave action hitting the beach. And then the run-up of the water as it runs up the slope of the beach and dissipates its energy basically becomes a thin layer of water several inches thick. You know how you've seen at any beach where you've seen waves run up on the beach. As it loses energy, it just becomes kind of a sheet of water at the top end of the beach. And that was spilling over the crest of the beach in certain locations during this last storm, running down into the streets of town and puddling in low-lying areas. But in the 100-year storm event, as penciled out by the Corps of Engineers, who collected all of the available data and tried to project what the 100-year storm event would be, we're looking at all of Kivalina being covered by 3 to 4 feet of water, which now means you don't have a sheet of water running into town. You have actual wave energy impacting structures. We're really talking about massive devastation is what we're talking about in that type of a storm event. So that's the worst case scenario that we're all worried about, is that type of overtopping of the beach shoulder and having actual wave energy impacting structures and washing stuff away.
When Tom mentioned a 100-year storm event, he is referring to a storm so strong that on average it would only occur once every 100 years. Remember how old Kivalina is?
This community was started around 1903.
It's so important to remember that unlike towns in the lower 48, Kivalina has no roads and no bridges. In the event of a severe storm, their options would be limited.
If you have a storm event here that produces the type of high water that we're worried about, the wind is blowing so hard no airplanes can land and no boats can be launched, which means you're here at Kivalina for the duration of whatever happens. You're not going anywhere. The only potential access out of here would be by helicopter. Well, the plan is to be in this school building because it's the strongest, highest structure in town, and that would be your only recourse, other than getting in a boat and hoping that you didn't turn over and drown somewhere. That would be your only recourse.
So at tonight's meeting, one idea that's getting a lot of attention is this: leverage Kivalina's need for an evacuation route to get funding to build a road and bridge to the mainland. That road would have to go somewhere, right? So why not to the new village site?
I think that's probably one of the things the borough is looking into and taking advantage of, is what federal dollars are there out there potentially for emergency response and things along those lines that you can tap into and kind of do two things at once. As Tom says, number one gives you an emergency access route out of here in case of a storm, but number two gives you a construction road to build your new site.
Soon the village will make a final site selection. No matter where they go, it is sure to cost a lot of money. Any road built here will cost at least $1 million a mile. Total relocation costs could easily top $100 million. Very roughly, that's over $250,000 for every man, woman, and child in the village. The people of Kivalina are keenly aware how much money and effort it will take to carve out a new home. They are ready to work and work hard. As for the money, they feel it is something they deserve. Again, Relocation Committee Chairman Enoch Adams.
We have, in our federal government, we have programs for building projects outside of the country. Our federal government provides water and sewer to places that they want to develop relations with, foreign relations with. And right here in our country's backyard, we live in third world conditions here, and we're part of the United States. I mean, why not us? If the federal government can provide funds to other countries for these kinds of things, why not us? We're Americans. We're home. We pay taxes. It's a question of equity for us. We would be treated equally. I mean, New Orleans gets every year funding from the federal government to keep the water from running into areas of New Orleans that are below sea level. And they get that every year. We're just asking for one-time funding of that amount of money to reestablish and provide services to our community that a normal American would expect, that a normal American takes for granted. Water and sewer, place to build, place to call home, personal property ownership, you know, the great American dream. Why not make that available to us as to any normal American? And we don't have that right now because of those two things, the erosion and the lack of space to build. And we're in America.
Hi, Quiana for flying Bering Air. Bering Air flies throughout Northwest Alaska and has hubs in Nome and Kotzebue. Bering Air flies both helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft, such as our Cessna Caravans, Piper Navajos, Beach King Airs, and our large cargo aircraft, the Casa. Bering Air offers daily scheduled flights and charters throughout Alaska and the Soviet Far East. Bering Air also provides emergency medical flights for Northwest Alaska. For safe and reliable service, fly with Bering Air.
In rural Alaska, we depend upon the rivers and the land for our subsistence. We depend upon our past to guide us into the future. We depend on toyo stove to keep our families warm. They're very efficient over the old type oil stoves that we used to have before.
Rural Energy Enterprises offers a wide variety of heating solutions for your home, like the Toyo Stove Laser 73 and Godan Boreal.
It's so efficient and it keeps our house, nice and cozy. You don't need no electricity, and you can also cook on it. You can pull the top up and then you can cook on it. And the burner is designed so that it's more efficient than the old type oil burners. They're priced well. You save money on heating fuel. It's a big plus in our village.
Rural Energy Enterprises, helping Alaskans save energy since 1987.
Heartbeat wishes to thank Hagelin Aviation Services Incorporated for making our stories possible. We travel on Hagelin Aviation and we thank you for choosing them too. Hagelin Aviation has been serving Alaskans in the bush for over 20 years.
We fly Hagelins all the time.
Operating with 29 aircraft at 8 stations across Alaska and servicing over 100 destinations daily. Hagelin Aviation, your ticket to ride in rural Alaska.
This spring, the people of Kivalina hope to work with our congressional delegation to get the much-needed money to move their village. And I'd like to thank the Kivalina IRA Council, Maniloc Association, and the Kivalina Relocation Committee for making this story possible. God bless every single one of you, and join us next week, won't you, for a trip to Tanana. We'll see you then. To purchase a copy of this program, have your credit card ready and call area code 907-563-7440 or send check or money order to Jeannie Green Productions, 6250 Tuttle Place, number 5, Anchorage, Alaska, 99507. Ask for the program number listed below.
Hear it from Hooslia to Pluto, gather around for Jeannie's show. It's the Aleut, the Indian and the Eskimo. It's the Aleut, the Indian and the Eskimo. It's the Aleut, the Indian and the Eskimo.
See ya.